Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're back with the course Introduction to Communication. It's a 20th lecture today, and the topic is group communication. We're continuing with the previous lecture. We started off it in our 19th lecture. So we'll be studying more about group communication today. First, let's move towards the type of meetings that we have, formal as well as informal group meetings. Well, a meeting is a gathering of two or more people where purposive discourse occurs. Of course, these purposes will vary. A group is at least 3 people and perhaps as many as 15 people or even more. Many times, groups meet face to face with a common purpose in mind, but the same meetup can be virtual as well. It depends on the circumstances and the type of work that takes place and the organizations involved and stuff. So such a group may be informal, which is like it can be unplanned, free-flowing discourse, or it can be a formal group with a clear planned purpose, for example. So we'll discuss these now. In informal group, actually casual or informal group meetings are common. For example, in case of informal groups, you casually chat over tea, or you meet after work, or you get together for purely social reasons. You and your friends meet to socialize, to interact, and it often happens spontaneously without any planning. Your business day is filled with such informal group meetings. Ironically, out of the need for frequent casual meetings may develop the need for more and more formal and directed meetings. Then coming to the formal group, it's often called task-oriented groups. Formal groups often search for answers to problems. They look for a course of action, make recommendations to a higher authority, for example. This means that you and others may meet to change, for example, a policy or to make decisions on how a specific problem should be solved and decide on the beginning steps to implementation of a solution. So it depends on the kind of work that you're into, the type of planning that goes into it, and the results that are expected to achieve. So on that basis, we can divide it into formal as well as informal. Now, whatever the group is, now we need to know how these are formed. So the formation of groups go through 4 formative stages in becoming a group. The first one is forming. I'll read it out for you. Team acquaints and establishes group rules. Formalities are preserved and members are treated as strangers. Actually, what happens is, here the group tries to get started. It is the orientation phase for the group members. They try to set certain rules. They try to they treat each other as strangers in terms of that they tend to know each other. Then the second step, storming. I'll read it out again. Members start to communicate their feelings, but still view themselves as individuals rather than part of the team. They resist control by group leaders and show hostility. So this is where in the storming phase, members begin to stake out their positions. They begin to have conflicts and arguments because they need to sort out their positions. Then the third stage, which is norming. People feel part of the team and realize that they can achieve work if they accept other viewpoints. So norming is where the process begins. Members work to solve conflicts and recognize acceptable kinds of conduct. They understand what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and that they are all linked together, so they need to work it out. Finally, performing. The team works in an open and trusting atmosphere where flexibility is the key and hierarchy is of little importance. So in this stage, the group begins to achieve its goals. They kind of start working together. Now, since we understand this thing, there is something very important that is about leadership in groups. So there's different styles of group leadership. The first one that we'll be discussing is authoritarian. In case of authoritarian, activity plans are actually made by the leader with some uncertainty on the part of the members about what the next steps may be. Then all policy decisions are usually made by the leader. Unless and until productivity is high, member frustration may increase, resulting from high standards set by the leader. See, if someone is a leader and he tries to lead his way, he has the authority. So usually there are certain people who lag behind. Obviously they might not be as active or as passionate or as clear-minded as the leader. So if he sets all the standards, I'm just using he for the sake of explanation, otherwise there's no gender differences, fine. So it creates frustration for the members who do not know what is the course of action and stuff. Then members' discontent may develop when leaders seek dominance for its own sake, for example. There is considerable status difference between the leader and the members. Then there are certain, for example, if there are aggressive status-seeking activities that develop among members who have a need for status, so they get into this fight, an unknown war for seeking higher status. The good point is members listen carefully to leaders' instructions. However, they may pay little attention to what others say unless productivity is at stake. So in an authoritarian system, they all know it's just the leader who is dealing with all of the things. So obviously they tend to give him the importance. Then there is a fundamental belief on the part of the leader that constant direction is necessary for goal achievement. So in this case, the leader is also quite burdened. He keeps on giving direction. As far as the members are concerned, there is limited responsibility placed on the members, and members are chosen for specific tasks only. Status comes from praise from the leader, which is usually personal and subjective. So the authoritarian setup is that kind of a thing. See, there can be groups in everywhere. For example, even you do have your tasks in groups, and then there are organizations that go for group work. So it depends on the kind of leadership, and that sets the mood for the whole group, the kind of work that they can achieve from that activity. Then the second type of group leadership, that is democratic. Well, in a democratic group leadership system, policy decisions are made by the group, encouraged and assisted by the leader. So the whole group is part of every decision making. Activity plans are, for example, made by the group. Technical advice is obviously provided by the leader whenever needed. Member satisfaction is gained in making their own decisions. They are quite satisfied. Then members grow in self-confidence and in self-acceptance. A leader and members, they actually function as peers, so there is not a wide gap between them. Emphasis on status decreases in a democratic setup, and emphasis on respect for other increases. Listening improves with the result of greater acceptance of the ideas of others. Very little stress is placed on discipline unless imposed by the group. The leader's relationship to the members is friendly, or you can say he's helping and tolerant. There's a fundamental belief on the part of the leader that the members can attain their own ends by using their own resources. So thus responsibilities are placed on all members. In democratic group leadership, status in the group is earned by the contribution made to the achievement of the group's goals. Thus, praise from the leader is objective and factually based. Now, moving to the third type, laissez-faire. Actually, laissez-faire is a French term that means leaving alone, or literally let you do. So in that case, members of the group are given help in activity plans by the leader only when it is requested. So, for example, the leader assists only when he is asked to assist. The group has complete freedom to make policy decisions without any help or guidance from the leader. Members do not know what is expected of them and develop disunity and dissatisfaction because they don't understand how to go about it. Then members obviously have little sense of accomplishment. Few contacts exist between leader and members. Thus, little friendship for the leader develops since he's not in constant contact, and he's only available when requested. So, kind of, there remains a communication gap. Status mindedness develops, resulting in competitive hostility. Members focus primarily on their own concerns. Listening to others' comments is quite infrequent in case of laissez-faire. There is no concern for goal achievement. There is no concern for discipline. Members develop self-assertiveness without regard for others. A lack of development of feelings of unity, self-confidence, or friendliness is a characteristic of laissez-faire group leadership style. Having said that, now let's move to, why we need to discuss all these things? Because you also go into group activities and you do group work and you are part of group communication. So you need to know what works and what doesn't work. That is why I just explained it to you. Obviously, you understand what is a positive thing, what is a negative thing. Now, for the rest of the people in the group, the participants, they also have different roles in group meetings or in group communications. We'll move towards that now. See, for example, different people have some people have their natural talent towards something, a natural inclination towards something, and they add a lot to a group. So let's discuss that. The first one is organizers. See, some people, they do not like to clutter, even in meetings. Some people are natural organizers. They dislike disorganizations. Meetings often move without direction from either the inability of the leader to give direction or because members wander off the path. When you are an organizer, you give procedural suggestions. You steer back the discussion to the main and central issues. For example, when you feel that the discussion is going off track, you might say something like, I feel we are wandering from the topic. I suggest we return to the main subject, which in my estimation is what criteria should we consider for including including students for independent radio production projects. So, see, whatever the discussion is, they steer them back to whatever the main point is. Then, a clarifier attempts to make unclear expressions clear. Simple. So I'll just repeat one statement for each of these so you understand how that person actually communicates. Since we are talking about group communication, so it's all about communication. The rules are actually in terms of communication. For example, a clarifier would say, it's useful when we begin with a consistent definition of the term strategic. Let's see if we can set a common understanding of the time frame. See? So if there is a discussion about something being strategic, actually the clarifier wants that things should be clarified well and it should be defined, well defined. That's it. Questioner. Many questions need clarification. You wish to fill your knowledge gap for yourself and others if you are a questioner. Be careful, you need to know the difference between a vital and an inconsequential question. But when in doubt, ask your question. Others may have had the same question but were afraid to ask. And we have had a lot of discussions on this thing, that there's so very much many times that there are people who have a lot of good questions but they are fearful of asking questions. That comes in our culture as well, and that has to deal is related to self-confidence and stuff as well. Okay, the fourth one, factual contributor. Anytime you add substantive, factual and accepted opinions or information to a discussion, you are making a worthwhile contribution. You need to watch your tone, because presenting factual information in an arrogant or overbearing manner will create negative reactions. So you need to be positive. For example, you may say, you make an interesting point. I like it. May I add some data from a study appearing in the fall issue of the Journal of Communication Studies? See, you just added some facts to whatever was stated earlier or whatever was stated by someone else. So you add to it. The fifth one is energizer. Gloom is a part of meetings, so is frustration. An energizer keeps the discussion moving by stimulating members to reach their goal. For example, hang in there, we're almost there. If you can make it another half hour, I'm sure we'll reach some kind of consensus. So, see, if you're lagging behind and unable to reach a consensus, the energizer just gives you a positive link to it. Then there are people whom we can call idea creator. The creator risks ideas that may be new, different, or even unusual. If you are an idea creator, you are willing to test an idea in the open forum of the meeting. For example, you might say, wait a sec, there may be a third option. Because we usually have two sides of an argument or two options that we tend to discuss. Now the seventh one, critical tester. Every meeting needs a person willing to challenge tactfully the validity and reasonableness of contributions. For example, someone to say, are the facts and the language clear? Are the sources of information recent? Can one see the source and verify the evidence given? So that kind of a person is very important because he actually wants everything tested and he's critical of whatever is being contributed. Eighth, conciliator. Deadlocks are not uncommon in meetings. Both sides refuse to budge. Violent disagreements do occur. You, as a conciliator, attempt to find a middle ground, seek to find a compromise. So people play different roles. You need people who actually patch things up. Finally, helpers of others. A final role you can play to invite other participants to join in. For example, I'd like to hear what, for example, Suhail has to say on the topic. So that is kind of an invitation to other participants to participate in whatever the discussion is. So that is very, very much important. So having said that, now let's move towards what is the role of group communication in an organization. See, the primary purpose of group communication is to share information. The information can vary from person to person depending upon his role. For example, the group leader may present the idea and present relevant information, and the other group members may give feedback. A group also communicates to manage conflicts along with making decisions to overcome the difficult circumstances. The exchange of ideas decides the future of the group and the goals which a group can achieve. For example, the way the family members share problems and discuss them to solve decides the kind of bond they have and the respect they show to each other. So once again, the role of group communication is very important to any organization. Now there can be primary as well as secondary groups. These are mainly two types of groups, as I just said, primary and secondary. It is dependent upon the degree to which the group meets one's needs. The primary group meets most of the needs of the individual. The secondary group meets some of the needs of the individual. Secondary groups generally include professional or work groups. Here the goal is to accomplish a task. For example, the purpose of a member of a sales department is to sell. When in a work group, a person can accomplish more than what he can accomplish individually. It is because people of different specialized skills, experiences, talents, or education work together in combinations to overcome new challenges and find ways to create approaches that they would not have created alone by themselves. But on the other hand, secondary groups may not meet your needs for mutual understanding and sharing on personal levels. Family members can understand you better on the personal front than your co-workers. So see, we all are part of groups. It's not just that the understanding that we previously had, we group for certain tasks. We are part of groups by birth. For example, our primary group is our family. Our secondary groups are other groups that we join on our way. For example, it can be your, for example, in your case, it's your university. setup. For example, it might be your friend's setup. So you join different groups to meet different needs of yours. These secondary groups, they help you accomplish some of the things. They satisfy some of your needs, but still you cannot be very much near to those people, dependent on the kind of connection you have with them. There's a lot of psychology related to the group communication, and it is way too much important that people need to understand. You and I, we all need to understand the psychology of group communication. It is a common belief that proper communication is better for the group. But according to research, the more a group discusses, the more it tends to polarize into two extreme opinions. You might have seen this even in families, in the primary groups as well, that the more a family tends to discuss something, there are more chances of them taking two different poles or two extreme opinions to a discussion. Because the group either tends to be taking cautious decisions or it takes risky decisions on the other hand. It is due to the typical human behavior that the group members may want to appear right in their choices. And this leads them to shift their stand in the position that the whole group favors. More communication in that case becomes harmful than less communication. The study of group communication reveals what leads to making a particular decision and why other choices are not made. It shows how a person's beliefs and values are kept aside and a common consensus can be made, taking into account the judgment of everyone present in the group. It also reveals how decisions are influenced by one another in the group. Also, how a person shows his identities related to his group can be revealed from the study of group communication. So there's a lot of psychology involved in it. Studying group communication changes and refines the everyday expectations and beliefs about a group working. As a field of study, it shows us for a better understanding of how different people in a group cooperate, influence, make decisions with their group members, and collectively accomplish their shared goals and set of objectives. Now, there are certain advantages as well as disadvantages of group communication. We'll just start off with the advantages. So let's have a look of what the advantages of group communication are. See, with the help of group communication, there occurs some idea generation because of the different viewpoints of different members that creates a valuable knowledge pool for the organization. With the assistance of group communication, organizations can come up with more comprehensive solutions. Plus, group communication also helps in making decisions that appreciate better acceptance. Similarly, whenever a group interacts with the superior authorities about some issues like your fee, a request for a demand for a fee to be paid in installments, or scholarships being available, or let's suppose laptops being given through loans. So they'll get more favorable outcomes compared to an individual interacting with top management for similar issues. So there are a lot of advantages of group communication. It gives us more room, more ideas. There is more pool of ideas. It gets bigger. Then the way they communicate, the kind of communication, the kind of respect they get, this also obviously changes. Then they can come up with more comprehensive solutions. So there are a lot of advantages to group communication. However, it has its downside as well. It has disadvantages as well. See, along with the advantages of group communication, there are some disadvantages. So we'll discuss those as well. For example, in the cases when, because of the dominance of some superiors or dominant members, other participants do not share their actual and accurate viewpoints, then obviously group communication cannot be beneficial. There are times some people are very dominant. They communicate aggressively, So the timid ones and those who kind of do not want to enter into an argument with some aggressive communicator, they tend to hide their actual viewpoints. So then the benefit is lost. Group communication can also create productivity issues for a company when the group members involve in some other sorts of personal discussions that may deviate the focus of the group from the company goals. See, we come across so many instances where the unions, they instead of benefiting the organization, they do more harm because they detract from the goals of the company or the organization, and they get into some other personal kinds of discussions, and they set apart some other kind of goals. So then obviously things go into a different way. So having said all this thing, I would like to share some practical advice with you, because you people have to do a lot of teamwork or a lot of group work, and you are into a lot of group communication throughout your degree program. So in the 4 years of your degree program, you're part of so many different groups to achieve so many different goals, to accomplish so many different tasks. And if you understand a bit of the basics of group work and teamwork, you can benefit a lot from all of this. So I would like to share a video with you now. So here we are with the video.
Group work a thorn in your side? This video will equip you with the strategies you'll need to help your group be successful, leaving you anxiety-free about your next project. But why have strangers collaborated on projects? Research shows that we actually learn better and retain more information when we work with diverse perspectives. No matter what career you choose, some form of group work will be necessary, so starting now is great practice. So why are group projects sometimes a major headache? Even though it has led to great things, like Destiny's Child and the Rolling Stones. Yet still, most students don't do group work, but instead stitch the work of 4 to 5 different individuals together, like it's Frankenstein's monster. The true purpose of group work is to use a range of perspectives to develop one polished and refined product. Now, let's focus on the early stages of group work. One of the biggest struggles students have with group work is managing the logistics of the project. Who's taking notes during the meeting? Who organizes meetings? Who will check in to see if tasks are completed? Before delving into the there are some bad habits that they want to improve on. For example, a tendency to be late or dominate a conversation. Basing these responsibilities on your answers will save you a lot of frustration down the road. We divided these responsibilities into roles like a note taker and a mediator. You can learn more by clicking the link in the description. Decide what works best for you and your group, and allow room for flexibility in your roles. Up next is project planning. Before you end, make sure your group is on the same page when it comes to your purpose, goals, and approach for the project. Be specific with your tasks. Instead of shoot a video, break down the process into each of its steps. This will prevent potential conflicts, and the group can always refer back to this page if you hit a roadblock. Make a chart with each task, the individual assigned to the task, its completion date, and necessary resources. Prioritize them based on time and importance, but be realistic and flexible with your deadlines. When assigning tasks and goals, assign them according to strength, but keep in mind that group work is a good opportunity to learn new skills. Aim for an equal number of hours when distributing tasks, and remember that some tasks may require more than one person. Also, make sure to schedule several check-ins so you can ensure that everyone stays on track and are better equipped to deal with setbacks. Another important part of group work is online collaboration. Online tools can promote efficiency and organization. However, many students go wrong by using it as a replacement for in-person group interaction. Think of a spectrum with complete democracy on one end and complete individualization on the other. There are certain parts of a group project that work better when the whole group is involved, and others where it might not be necessary. For example, big group decisions like ideating and check-ins should be done in person. Maybe a subgroup where a few students work together on a big task and present back to the whole team is more appropriate. Items like deciding a font are probably what's appropriate for each task, but strive for in-person or video conferences as much as possible. Even though scheduling is a hassle, sometimes things that take 20 emails to figure out can easily occur in a 10-minute conversation. Here are some online tools we suggest for your own group work. However, it's easy to forget that not everyone is Facebook or can use these platforms. Exchange phone numbers and emails the old-fashioned way, especially in cases of emergency. If there's a gap in your group's communication, it's also handy to know how to manage conflict. Conflict of some magnitude is pretty much inevitable when you work with others. The way you handle it determines whether the different perspectives, personalities, and interests work to the team's advantage or its demise. Some examples of conflict you might face include a conflict of ideas, a lack of accountability, or missing deadlines. To stay on the right track, here are some tips on how to manage conflicts that may arise. Stay calm, be patient and respectful, and have each person speak one at a time. To avoid personal attacks, address the action, not the person. Instead of you always or you should, try I feel or I've noticed. If the issue gets personal, enlist the help of an objective party, like a TA or your prof. All relationships require compromise, so choose solutions that are in the group's best interests. Also, be sure to check out the links for specific strategies to help you with group process, managing conflict, and communicating effectively. In the end, what most people dislike about group work is the stress of managing it. By embracing the core idea of actually working in a group, you'll have the opportunity to identify your own strengths and weaknesses and soon learn firsthand what great groups can achieve.
So you see, effective teamwork is once again all about communication. How you plan your communication, how you go about it, how you resolve your issues, how you plan your deadlines. It's all about group communication. If you learn effective group communication, you can make things work out very well for you, not only in your student life but in your professional life as well as in your personal life, because you're part of groups one way or the other. That's all for today. Thank you.